We come on the air today as Congress moves toward impeaching the president, and his supporters plan their next moves. This week's chaos at the Capitol is under layers of investigation now. The bloodshed and trashing at the symbolic and literal halls of U.S. democracy came with a call to disrupt Congress as it moved to certify the Electoral College results.
147 members of Congress, all Republicans, voted to reject the electors in Arizona and Pennsylvania, which effectively would have disenfranchised millions of voters.
And among those voting to decertify, Florida Senator Rick Scott and Miami Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart and Carlos Jimenez. Only Carlos Jimenez accepted our invitation to join us today, but just a little while ago canceled this morning, citing a medical emergency.
We are grateful that Congressman Deutch of Boca Raton can join us this morning. There he is. Good morning, Congressman. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to be with you. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Glenna.
And congratulations on being reelected chair of the House Ethics Committee.
Thank you.
Congressman, were the words that Donald Trump gave at the Ellipse on Wednesday the fuse that lit the bomb that went off at the Capitol?
Well, this was a fuse that was lit. You could go back to the beginning of the administration, but certainly you could go back to the days before the election when the president announced that if he lost, the only way he would lose was if there was fraud. And then he lost by a lot, 7 million popular votes, and he was trounced in the Electoral College. And sure enough, said that it was fraud, started advancing conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory, day after day after day. And then fast forward to what happened on Wednesday morning when he urged the people who attended this rally to march on the Capitol and fight back. So this is incitement. It's sad, but it's not complicated. It's shocking, but it's not surprising. This is what led to this, and this is why we're focused on how we can move forward to ensure that the president does no further damage to our country, to our national security, or to our standing in the world.
Congressman, so you are one of the people calling for this second impeachment, and I pulled a draft of the impeachment article that was written. Of course, impeachment is for high crimes and misdemeanors, and I want to read for our viewers a little bit about what he says about the president, who, it says, also willfully made statements that encouraged and foreseeably resulted in imminent lawless action at the Capitol, kind of what you were just talking about. You're an attorney. Deconstructing his speech, does it rise to that kind of criminal evidence that impeachment would be appropriate?
What's appropriate here is that Glenna, we shouldn't have to worry about what this president may choose to do over the next week and a half after what happened on Wednesday. That's why I joined with a number of my colleagues in urging the vice president to invoke the 25th Amendment. There are widespread calls for the president to resign, and there's this impeachment, but this isn't just a legal matter of interpreting what's in this document. We now have heard from Republicans in the House, Republicans in the Senate, those closest to the president who serve at his side, who have resigned saying, this is too much, we cannot tolerate this. Conservative commentators and newspapers who have called for the president to leave office. We have to use every tool that we have to hold the president accountable and to allow us to turn the page so that we can move on safely and defend our democracy and defend our Constitution.
Yeah. ABC News Ipsos poll that came out this morning shows that 56% of Americans believe the president should be removed. But Congressman Deutch, there are others who are going to say, look, 10 days left in the guy's presidency. He's going to leave. He is finally conceded that Joe Biden won. So just let it go. What's your response to that?
Michael, how often have we heard in this administration arguments along the lines of, well, this is just Trump being Trump. This is what he does. He sees people marching with tiki torches, screaming, Jews will not replace us. sees very fine people in that group, and we say, well, let's not overdo it. He puts people in cages at the border. We say, let's not overdo it. He uses tear gas and the military to clear out a park of peaceful protesters seeking racial justice. And we say, well, this is just what Trump does, and the president, and there's going to be an election. And now we've had an election, and we've seen what can happen when there is a violent attack on the symbol of representational democracy in our country. And we say, well, it's only 10 more days. I don't see how it is that it's acceptable for us to look at what happened on Wednesday in this insurrection on our Capitol and say, well, why don't we just sit back? We'll see how this plays out. We'll cross our fingers. We'll hope nothing like this happens again. We need to do everything we can to move forward. And the way to do that is to protect our country, our reputation, the office of the presidency, by listening to what all those Republicans and conservatives and Democrats have come together and said, which is that the president needs to leave office.
Congressman, shortly after that, in the wee hours of the morning, and despite what we have just been talking about and looking at, 147 of your colleagues nationally voted to overturn essentially votes in 2 states, either one or both, Arizona and Pennsylvania. A dozen of them are your colleagues, Florida congressmen and women, and Rick Scott, the senator from Florida. And I wonder if you had any conversations with any of those colleagues, and what did you say to them, and what was the response about that?
I've not had an opportunity to speak with my colleagues yet. We finished at, as you point out, at around 4 in the morning. Important that we were not going to allow that insurrection prevent us from doing our job of defending our democracy. But when I have the opportunity, I will make clear, as I have publicly, how sorely disappointing it is that my colleagues chose, that Senator Scott chose to try to reverse the outcome of an election. This is not a question of how you feel about the candidates. This is not about whether you think that things went the way that you wanted or not. This is about doing the job that we have as elected officials, which is to certify the outcome of an election that was contested, that was challenged by the losing candidate in dozens and dozens of courtrooms around the country, that saw the president of the United States attempt to threaten an elected official, multiple elected officials, it appears now, in Georgia, again, to step in at the last minute to reverse. To simply certify that after all of that, we have an outcome that's been certified. Congress needs to step in and do that. And yet they chose to vote to reverse the outcome of the election. It is a sad, I believe, it's a sad dereliction of duty to take the side of a president who is espousing conspiracy theories rather than standing with the Constitution, with our democracy, with the judiciary, and all of those judges who rejected out of hand all of these conspiracy theories advanced by the losing candidate, by the president. And that's what I will tell them when we have this conversation. And we need to be able to move forward. But I'll tell you, it's really, really challenging when people failed to stand up and do their job, which is not to defend the president and his crazy theories.
Well, we would have, Congressman, excuse me, but we were going to ask Congressman Jimenez why he voted as he did. He has a medical emergency, so we will do it on another occasion. Let me ask you this. The U.S. Capitol Police were woefully unprepared for what happened on Wednesday, even though other military intelligence, police intelligence, the ADL, any number of people warned the Capitol Police 3, 4, 5 days ahead of time. The Proud Boys, QAnon, all these violent people were going to be part of this crowd. What happened? Why were they so unprepared?
Well, Michael, we don't know yet, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. The Capitol Police also knew to be prepared. That's why we were all told on Tuesday that we should arrive early at the Capitol on Wednesday, that we should plan to stay within the Capitol complex and not go outside the entire day. we knew that there were threats. But I'm gonna use this just quickly as an opportunity to point out that while we figure out what happened, the Capitol police officers, at least one of whom has died, and another, it appears, perhaps may have. So many of them, all of them, put their lives at risk to defend us, and we need to find out what happened that led to this. But the mental health challenges that they're facing now, and that people who survived this in the Capitol, staff members in particular, are immense. And as someone who has been through the crisis of trauma associated with a mass shooting, I hope we learn from this, not just what happened to stop that led to this breach on our democracy, but I hope it reminds us that we need to do more to address the mental health aspects of things like this when they happen, and to redouble our efforts to prevent the kinds of things like that horrible shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas in February of 2018. This sort of trauma is real. And I'm sorry if it's a little off topic, but I've heard from so many of the families from Parkland and from Coral Springs and from all throughout South Florida who are just reminded of the trauma that they felt. It's a different setting, I know, but it's important for us to stand up and ensure adequate mental health resources and to redouble our efforts to stop gun violence.
Congressman, before, in the short time we have left, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on something. Twitter canceled the president's accounts this week, and the reason Twitter used is because they said that this Twitter account was a risk to inciting violence. And so for many people, that move is raising questions about big tech, so to speak, orchestrating free speech. Is that a slippery slope to you? And it also sort of involves a lot of Spanish language radio where disinformation is percolating in our neck of the woods. I'm interested to hear your take on that.
Well, first of all, let's be honest. I wish that some of the outrage that we've seen among people because the president was thrown off of Twitter, I wish that they shared at least a fraction of that outrage for the attack that took place on our nation's capital, incited by the president and the conspiracy theories that he's been espousing. That's number one. Number two, look, there are lots of issues that we're going to be grappling with in the new Congress in the way that the technology companies operate. But Twitter took this action, and Facebook acted similarly, because they believed that the president's tweets posed a threat. Imagine if they had actually taken that action sooner. Imagine if the president, as so many of us had said from the beginning, had stopped tweeting and actually focused on trying to bring the country together instead of using Twitter to viciously attack those who don't believe and support everything that he does. Yes, there are lots of conversations we're going to have. But let's remember the outrage and the shock and the anger really ought to be focused on what happened on Wednesday when our nation's capital came under attack by Americans.
That indeed should be everybody's focus. Congressman Ted Deutch, always good to speak with you. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
Glad you survived the attack.
Well, thanks very much. And it's good to be with you as always. And I hope we move forward with a happier new year.
Same. Thank you.